When investigators look for independent sources to confirm facts or events, what they're really doing is trying to move the case away from a simple he said, she said situation and toward something that can actually stand on solid ground. This is often called cross-corroboration, and it's one of the most important steps in building a defensible finding. The reason is simple. When information comes from independent sources, it gives you an objective anchor for what is otherwise subjective human memory. So what counts as an independent source? In simple terms, it's anyone or anything that doesn't have a stake in the outcome. These are people or records that aren't trying to prove one side right or wrong. That could be third-party witnesses, like security staff, customers, contractors, delivery drivers, or visitors people, who just happen to be there. They're useful because they usually don't have a personal connection to either party, which reduces bias. When multiple independent witnesses describe the same event in a consistent way, that creates a kind of confidence multiplier for the investigator. Finding these sources isn't passive, you have to actively go looking for them. That often means asking direct questions like, who else saw or heard what happened? Or who did you speak to right after the incident? It can also involve canvassing an area to identify people who didn't come forward on their own. In some cases, investigators will review attendance logs, badge swipes, or sign-in records to figure out who was physically present but hasn't been interviewed yet. Once you start collecting accounts, a key principle is separation of witnesses. You don't want people influencing each other's memory. If witnesses talk before they're interviewed, there's a real risk they'll unconsciously align their stories, not because they're lying, but because people naturally adjust their memory when they hear someone else's version of events. It's also important to distinguish between eyewitnesses and corroborative witnesses. An eyewitness directly saw what happened. A corroborative witness didn't see the incident itself, but can still confirm surrounding facts. For example, someone might not have seen an accident, but they heard a loud bang and then saw someone injured moments later. That still adds value, even if it's indirect. A critical rule here is, always go back to the original source. If someone says, I heard it from Susan, that's not evidence yet. It's a lead. Investigators need to find Susan and hear it directly from her, otherwise the information becomes diluted and unreliable. The strongest cases are built when testimony lines up with objective records. Things like emails, chat messages, CCTV footage, system logs, and metadata are powerful because they were created at the time events occurred. They don't rely on memory. These records often become the backbone of an investigation because they can confirm or contradict what people say with a high degree of precision. They also play another role, helping to refresh memory. When witnesses review documents or messages, they often recall details they had forgotten or correct inconsistencies in their own accounts. In some cases, these records can also help validate admissions or confessions by checking whether they align with system activity or digital traces. A practical point investigators always keep in mind is sufficiency. You don't need to interview every possible witness to reach a defensible conclusion. If several independent witnesses provide a consistent account, and that account is supported by records or physical evidence, that may be enough to establish the facts on the balance of probabilities. Once certain facts are supported by multiple independent sources, they can be treated as not in dispute. These become the foundation of the case. From there, investigators focus their energy on the areas where accounts differ. Finally, it's worth remembering that strong findings are rarely built on a single smoking gun. More often, they come from accumulation. Small pieces of consistent information, each one, maybe not decisive on its own start, to build a pattern. That's the grains of sand effect. Individually modest evidence can, when combined, become strong enough to shift the entire balance. And that's really the purpose of corroboration. It's not about finding perfection. It's about building enough independent support so that the final conclusion isn't based on belief, it's based on converging evidence.